Hello everyone, welcome to the video. My name is Maze, and in this video I'm going to continue to learn how to use my lathe by making this gavel. A gavel is a good beginner lathe project because you get some good practice doing basic skills. You make a lot of beads and coves, which go a long way in decorating and beautifying your work. You make a handle, which is something you may end up doing a lot of on a lathe. You make and size a tenon, and you work on a lot of different pieces that aren't next to each other that have to be the same size. So all in all, I think this is a good practice project for a beginner, which is why I decided to do it. So I started out by making a 2-scale sketch of what I wanted to do, and as you can see here, I planned on making a handle, the head, and the anvil. So with all that out of the way, let's make some dust. So the first thing I did was take this branch, what I think is willow, and cut it on the miter saw. It is nice and dry, so I wanted to cut out the checking, and it also had a bend in it, so I cut that out to give me a short and a long piece that are relatively straight. Then I took the short piece, found a center, and put it in the lathe. Now this is my first time ever working with a branch. I never usually see actual bark in my shop, and one thing I learned is that you want to wear a dust mask. I was thinking my face shield would be enough, and it was when I made my mallet, but this bark really just powders into a very dirty kind of dust. So next time I will be wearing a dust mask when working with something like this, and you should too. So once I got it nice and straight, I began to lay out the design, and I was very fast and loose with my measurements here, kind of just going with it and eyeballing it, and that's a mistake. You should be as meticulous about this as you are with fine joinery if you want it to look good. Again, I'm new to turning, so a lot of what I'm doing here is experimenting with different tools and techniques. Like you can see here, when I'm doing my beads, I'm like rocking my whole body left and right. It's working in the sense my beads are coming out okay, but it's very awkward and uncomfortable. Usually if you're using a tool for its intended purpose and your technique is good, there should be a very smooth and controlled feeling, a very logical sort of body movement, and if it feels weird or awkward, you're doing it wrong. So try to remember that if you are learning a new skill or using a new tool, and it will help you to be able to teach yourself. People have been using these tools for thousands of years, and these are the ones that have survived because they're the best way. So if it feels less than that, then you're probably the problem. So keep that in mind, and later when I figure out a better way, I'm going to point it out to you. So I'm done with the head right now, and I start working on the anvil. I'm trying to get the head and the anvil out of this one piece of wood, but I ended up in the end abandoning the anvil simply because this branch wasn't wide enough for it. The anvil has to be wider than the head by more than I could make it out of this branch. It just didn't look right, and so I had to just abandon the idea of making the anvil as well. It just wasn't looking good, and so sometimes you have to know when to just cut your losses. And overall, I wasn't really happy with any of this. I thought my mallet did not look very symmetrical, and it just looked like there was a front and a back, and it really shouldn't. So I kind of decided to give up on this whole piece.
What we've got here is failure.
So I took all the lessons I learned from that and decided to try again. Now I measured it, and the long piece would be just long enough to make the handle and the head. So I found some centers and I put it in the lathe and tried again. So not only am I trying to show you a good beginner project for the lathe, but I'm also trying to show you how to become a better woodworker by teaching yourself to teach yourself, how to learn from mistakes and experiment to develop your skills without needing someone there to tell you what to do. But I don't want to give the impression that I'm some savant who can pick up anything. Like for example, here I am again turning bark without a dust mask, telling myself, wow, there's a lot of dust, just like the last time I did this. I wish there was some solution, and I haven't figured out the obvious solution. Usually, I only have enough humility to show myself messing up once on camera. After that, my pride steps in and edits it out. But I'm letting you know it's okay to not be perfect at things the first or third or fifth time you do it. The goal is improvements, not perfection. So this time I spent a lot more time laying out my design. I was being very careful about my measurements, and it was coming out a lot better. Then my camera died out and disaster struck. So as you can see, we had a major chip out, and I think this sort of bark inclusion area kind of continued on here and caused those areas to fail.
Not quite according to plan. Complications arose, ensued, were overcome.
So at first I was disheartened by this, but then I thought I could just change it around and use this part for the handle instead of the head. But I decided to not just turn it down straight away, but to practice my beading and coving a bit free from pressure. I could practice it and then turn it all down. So this gave me more freedom to experiment stress-free. And here I learned I could do my beading by just spinning the tool in my hand, that I could achieve the same result by twisting my wrist that I could by moving my whole body back and forth, and it feels smoother and more controlled, more like surgery rather than swinging a baseball bat. Generally speaking, when using a tool, the method that requires the least amount of movement on your part is the better way. I have much better control over one movement of the wrist than I do trying to get my whole body to smoothly move back and forth. Is this the best way to do it? I don't know. Maybe there's some stupidity in what I'm doing that I just don't see, but it feels better than before, so I'm going with it for now, and will continue to search for better ways to do it. And watch out for this specific technique when I watch other YouTubers turn, which previously I didn't have enough knowledge and experience to know to even look for that. And that's how you get better and improve on your own. And now, empowered by my new discovery and renewed in confidence, I march forward and turn it down to start working on the handle. So I lay out the basic pattern, just the parts that are important at this stage. On the previous project, the mallet, which you can find in the cards or on my channel page, the playlist Lathe projects, I felt the need to lay out all the lines every time I needed to lay things out, even though I was going to turn most of them off before I needed them. So this one I was sure to not put it on until I could, until it was going to stay and I wasn't going to turn it off before I needed it. I also used the calipers much more and was really paying attention to the key thicknesses, especially the tenon. I really wanted that to be nice and tight, so I could drill out a mortise and have it fit nicely. Overall, I liked the design. I deviated from my layout where I felt compelled to by aesthetics, or I simply failed to achieve it from lack of skill, or sometimes it just didn't translate into reality or practicality. For example, the finial on the end was just too delicate in my design. It felt like it would break off in use if I made it that delicate, and so I made it a little bit more stout, and then I sanded it down and soldered it off. And then it was my last shot at the head, and even though this was do or die and I had already messed up too, I didn't feel super nervous. For starters, if it didn't work out, there was no consequences. This wasn't for a client, and I hadn't really invested any money in it. I had gotten the branch for free, so instead I felt confident that this one would turn out the best yet. So I took all the lessons I had learned, I laid it out as best I could, taking my time, not being shy with the calipers, to make sure the thicknesses that were supposed to be the same were the same. Looking close and being the same are not the same thing. And then using the beading and coving techniques I had honed over the course of this project, and finally, the third time was the charm. And then I oiled it with a few coats of oil, and you could see like two spots on it that still have the innermost layer of the bark. They're like really darker than the rest of it. I like to think of them as little birthmarks, so I really dug that look, and I really dug the way the growth rings were kind of the front and back of the gavel. It just looks cool that it came from one solid branch. And then I just drilled out the mortise with the Forstner bit and the drill press, and used epoxy to glue it all together. And then there you go, a gavel fit for the Supreme Court. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch. Off camera, I did put a few coats of shellac on it since it will be handled a lot. And there it is. I think it's pretty cool, and it's a great beginner lathe project that makes a decent gift. But I don't know any judges, you say? Well, there are a lot of people who have formal meetings, either with clubs or groups or boards that use gavels. So more people than you think might think it's cool to receive a custom-made gavel. And if not, you could use it as a mallet in your shop. And that's the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it or learned something, I'd appreciate it if you'd click that thumbs up.
I like it a lot.
Or if you know someone who could use or would enjoy this, please share it with them.
That way, you can build me up so I won't have to brag about myself later.
And if you would like to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell.
Be honored if you would join us.
And watch a few more of my videos.
Please, sir, I want some more.
So thanks for watching, and until next time, support your local craftsmen or get out in your workshops and make your own dust. And together, we can make making great again.